Get out of my house before I bury you in it. That was the first thing I heard in my head when the nightmare with my son began. I never thought those words would come from the child I raised, but that night showed me just how far he was willing to go. People think family betrayal comes with a warning, but it doesn't. It hits like a car crash. One moment you are cutting cake at a birthday party, and the next you are staring down the fact that your own blood is trying to strip your life bare. That is where my story begins, and if you stick with me, you will see just how ugly, shocking, and strangely satisfying the truth can be when it finally comes out. I am so glad you are here. If you are watching this video, please like and subscribe to my channel, and tell me in the comments where you are listening to my story of revenge from. I want to know who is out there with me, hearing this and thinking about what you would have done in my shoes. My name is Harriet Monroe. I am 70 years old. I live alone in the same brick house I bought decades ago, a house filled with every photo, every letter, every memory that makes up a life. That house is worth more than money to me, though if you are curious, the market puts it at about $850,000. Inside that house sits a safe with $75,000 in cash and more than $200,000 in stock certificates I had been holding on to. That was my safety net, the one thing that gave me peace of mind. I thought it would also be something to leave behind for my son. I was wrong. Lucas, my son, turned 42 last week. He wanted a birthday party bigger than anything he had ever thrown before. He rented a glass-fronted villa right on the edge of the water. The driveway was packed with new cars, music pounded from the speakers, and the whole place smelled of expensive liquor and food catered from the best restaurant in town. It looked like a picture of success, but I knew better. I had seen the unpaid bills stuffed in his kitchen drawers, the way he avoided calls, the whispers that followed him about debts he could not cover. Still, I went. I told myself it was my duty as a mother to show up. He greeted me with a smile too wide and eyes that darted everywhere but at me. He hugged me too quickly, almost like he was checking if I had brought something for him. His wife Sophie stayed close to his side, her hand squeezing his arm every time his voice lifted too high. She smiled at me, but it was the kind of smile that hides fear. The villa was filled with strangers. Men in tailored suits, women in dresses dripping with jewels. People I had never seen in Lucas's circle before. They laughed too loud, slapped him on the back, called him champ and king. I stood in the corner with a glass of sparkling water, watching my son hold court like he was someone important. All I could think about was how he used to run around our yard in patched jeans, waving a stick like it was a sword. Somewhere between that boy and the man in front of me, I had lost him. I tried to settle in, to pretend. I told myself this was just a celebration, that maybe he had found a way to turn things around. But the little details kept cutting through the noise. The way he avoided looking at me directly. The way Sophie's fingers trembled when she picked up her wineglass. The quick whispers in corners when people thought I wasn't paying attention. When he raised his glass to give a toast, his voice carried across the room. To family, to loyalty, to the people who always stand by you no matter what. His eyes locked on me as he said the last words. My chest tightened. The room applauded, but I could feel the chill behind the cheer. As the night stretched on, I sat down near the back and let the music wash over me. I studied my son. He laughed too loud, drank too much, moved with the twitchy energy of a man about to fall apart. And then he leaned over to one of his friends and whispered just loud enough for me to hear. "Tonight's the night. It's now or never." The words cut through the chatter like a knife. I froze in my seat, my pulse hammering. He didn't see me looking, but I caught the gleam in his eyes. It wasn't the look of a man celebrating his birthday. It was the look of a man about to pull something reckless, something desperate. I gripped the edge of my chair, every instinct screaming that something was wrong. That night was not just a party. It was the opening act of a betrayal that would shake every brick of my home, every shred of trust I had left, and every ounce of strength I thought I no longer had. And that was only the beginning. The music was still loud enough to rattle the windows, but my attention was fixed on the little cracks in the night that nobody else seemed to notice. I kept to the edges of the crowd, watching Lucas move from one guest to the next. His voice carried just a little too high, his laughter ringing hollow. He had the polish of a man playing a role, not the ease of someone enjoying his own birthday. Every now and then, his eyes flicked toward me and then away, like he was making sure I stayed where he could see me. Sophie hovered close, her smile glued in place. She poured drinks for people, adjusted his jacket collar, whispered in his ear whenever his words threatened to stumble into something reckless. I watched her fingers tremble each time she lifted her glass. That was not the behavior of a woman celebrating her husband. That was the behavior of someone guarding a dam about to burst. A man in a blue suit leaned close to Lucas. Their heads nearly touched. I shifted slightly, pretending to adjust my chair so I could catch a few words. "The clock is ticking. Better make sure it's tonight." Lucas gave a short nod and smirked. Then his eyes darted back toward me, quick and sharp, like he was making sure I hadn't heard. I pressed my lips together and stayed still. My stomach tightened. He thought I was just an old woman sipping water in the corner. He forgot I had ears sharper than he gave me credit for. As the evening wore on, I noticed the little things that screamed trouble. Lucas never touched the food. His glass was never empty. He checked his watch every 10 minutes, even when someone was talking directly to him. Whenever I approached, he shifted conversations or threw an arm around my shoulder with a smile too wide. "You're the reason we're all here," he said once, loud enough for the nearest tables to hear. His hand gripped my shoulder so tightly it hurt. I tried to focus on the music, on the clinking of glasses, on the laughter rolling across the villa, but my mind was running through numbers. $850,000 in that house, $75,000 in cash, more than $200,000 in stock certificates in the safe my late husband had bolted into the floor. Every penny was there, because I had planned carefully, saved carefully, fought for every bit of it. And for the first time, I felt a chill thought creeping in. What if tonight wasn't about his birthday at all? Around 9, Sophie walked past me carrying a tray of empty glasses. She glanced at me, then quickly away. But in that 1 second, I caught the shimmer of tears in her eyes. She disappeared into the kitchen. When she returned, her face was dry, her smile back in place. But I knew what I had seen. I rose from my chair and walked to the back patio, needing air. The ocean wind slapped my face, cool and salty. Behind me I heard footsteps. Lucas stepped outside, still smiling, but his jaw was tight. "Enjoying yourself, Mum?" he asked. His voice was casual, but I heard the edge underneath. "It's a fine party," I said, almost too fine for someone always claiming money is tight. His smile flickered. "You worry too much. I told you I've got things under control." "Under control with who?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. His eyes hardened for just a moment. Then he laughed. "Mom, please. Tonight is about fun. You don't need to ask questions that spoil the mood." I looked him in the eye. "I know the look of a man in trouble. I lived through it with your father. Don't lie to me, Lucas." He leaned closer, his breath hot with wine. "You think you know everything. You don't. So just relax, enjoy the night, and let me handle things." Before I could answer, Someone called his name from inside. He straightened, forced a smile, and patted my arm. See? Everyone loves me tonight. Don't ruin it. Then he walked back in, shoulders stiff. I stayed outside for several minutes, staring at the dark water. My heart thudded hard. He was hiding something, and the way his eyes darted, the way Sophie trembled, the way strangers whispered in corners, all of it added up to danger. When I returned inside, I caught another fragment. A man with slicked back hair leaned toward Lucas at the bar. Better hope she doesn't find out before it's done. Lucas glanced around nervously, then spotted me again. He forced a laugh and clapped the man on the back. The tension in the room had become visible, at least to me. The smiles were too forced, the laughter too sharp. Lucas was moving faster now, talking louder, hugging people he barely knew. I sat back down and folded my hands in my lap. My instincts told me the walls were closing in. Close to 10, I excused myself to the restroom. On the way back, I passed Sophie in the hallway. She stopped me, her eyes darting to make sure no one was near. "Mrs. Monroe," she whispered, her voice shaky. "You should go home. Right now." I froze. "Why?" She swallowed hard. "Please, just trust me. Go home." Before I could press her, Lucas appeared at the end of the hallway. Sophie straightened, pasted her smile back on, and brushed past me with a tray in hand. Lucas walked up, his expression flat. "Everything okay?" "Fine," I said. He studied me, then smiled again. "Good. Stay and enjoy yourself. Don't wander off too much. I want you close tonight." My skin prickled. His words sounded caring, but the grip on my elbow was not. I returned to my chair, my mind racing. Sophie's warning echoed in my ears. I checked the time. 10:15. Something was brewing, and I knew my role was not that of a guest of honor. I was part of a plan I had not agreed to. The candles on the cake burned low as everyone gathered to sing. Lucas leaned over the flames, smiling for the cameras. His eyes cut to me through the haze of smoke. "Make a wish," someone shouted. He closed his eyes and blew hard. The room cheered, but I could see the truth in his clenched jaw and the twitch in his hand. His wish was not for happiness or health. His wish was for something darker, something dangerous, and I was standing right in the middle of it. I smiled faintly, keeping my thoughts to myself. If he thought I would sit quiet, he had forgotten who raised him. Something told me the night was far from over, and the next chapter would reveal just how deep this betrayal ran. The cake had barely been cut when Lucas came over to me. He leaned close, his smile stretched too tight, his voice pitched low enough that the noise of the room almost covered it. "Mum, we need to talk about the house." I set my fork down. "What about it?" He kept the smile plastered on for anyone watching. "It's too much for you. You live alone in that old place. It needs work. Taxes are high. It would be better if I handled it." I stared at him. "Handled it how?" "Transfer the deed to me," he said. "I'll take care of everything. You can relax, live without worrying about bills. Isn't that what you want?" I didn't answer right away. The words hung in the air between us. Behind him, Sophie moved nervously, filling glasses, avoiding my eyes. Lucas's grip on my chair tightened. "Lucas," I said slowly, "that house is mine. Your father and I built our lives in it. I'm not handing it over like a set of car keys." His smile dropped for a second, his jaw tightening before he forced it back again. "You don't get it. I need control of it. You'll thank me later." I turned my head to look at him fully. What do you need it for, Lucas? Tell me the truth. He leaned down, his voice dropping even lower. Debts, Mum. Big ones. People don't wait forever. If I don't pay them off, I'm finished. My stomach clenched. So you want me to save you again, after all the other times? How much this time? Enough, he muttered. More than you think. I don't have time to explain every detail. Just sign it over. Tonight. I felt my pulse hammering. Tonight? Yes, he snapped, his smile cracking. Then he quickly glanced around, lowered his voice again. I have the papers ready. Just make it easy for both of us. I pushed my chair back an inch. You already forged something, didn't you? His eyes flickered, confirming what I already knew. Sophie appeared at his side, her hand brushing his sleeve. Lucas, not now, she whispered. He brushed her off. She needs to hear it. I stood. You brought me here to corner me. This wasn't about your birthday at all. Lucas's face hardened. Don't make this difficult. You think you can keep living in that house forever? You'll be better off once I'm in charge. You mean once you've sold it, I said. Once you've drained every cent and left me with nothing. His eyes flashed with anger. For the first time that night, the mask slipped. You think you're untouchable because you're my mother. You're not. If you don't cooperate, you'll regret it. Sophie's face went pale. She tugged at his arm, her voice trembling. Lucas, please stop. Not here. He turned on her with a sharp glare. Stay out of this. I felt the weight of every eye in the room shifting toward us. Conversations slowed. The music still played, but softer, as if the whole place was holding its breath. I lowered my voice, steady, but firm. You brought me here to trap me. You're not getting what you want. Lucas leaned in until his face was inches from mine. We'll see about that. For a moment, we stared at each other, neither blinking. His hand gripped the back of my chair like he was holding himself back from shaking me. Then he straightened suddenly, forced his grin again, and clapped his hands. Let's open the presents, he shouted to the room. Guests laughed, the tension scattered, and Sophie rushed to fetch wrapped boxes from the corner. But the look Lucas gave me as he moved away was not one of celebration. It was a warning. I stayed seated, my chest rising and falling too quickly. Every instinct told me this was spiraling into something darker than I had imagined. Later, while guests circled the table of gifts, Lucas slid a thick envelope across to me under the cover of wrapping paper. Read it, he hissed. I opened it halfway, just enough to see the heading. Property transfer agreement. My name written in shaky blue ink, my signature forged at the bottom. I looked up slowly. You already did it. He smirked. Paperwork is just paperwork. You can deny it, but it won't matter if the right people believe it. You should just make it official. Sign the real one. Save yourself the fight. You forged my name, I said, my voice quiet but sharp. And I'll do it again if I have to, he replied, his words like ice. Stop acting like you hold the power here. You don't. My hands trembled, but I forced myself to meet his stare. I will never give you that house. His smirk widened. Then watch what happens next. Sophie set down another glass in front of me, her hand brushing mine briefly. Her eyes met mine with a silent plea. She wanted me to understand something, but fear kept her lips sealed. The music rose again, laughter filled the room, and yet every sound felt distant, muffled by the weight of the envelope in my lap. Lucas returned to his friends, slapping backs, pretending everything was normal. But I had seen what was underneath. His desperation was clawing at him, and now it was aimed squarely at me. I folded the envelope, slipped it back toward him, and stood. My voice was calm, but inside, my fury burned. You will regret trying to take from me, Lucas. He leaned close, whispering so only I could hear. The regret will be yours. He straightened, raised his glass again, and the crowd roared their approval. But for me, the celebration was over. I knew exactly what kind of battle I was standing in, and I knew it was only just beginning. The cake had been sweet, the wine strong, but the taste in my mouth was bitter. The night had shifted. The birthday party was no longer a party at all. It was the opening move in a fight for everything I had left. I sat back down, gripping the edge of the table, my mind already racing ahead. He had made his threat clear. He had shown me his hand. And I knew in that moment, this was no longer about family. This was war. The call came just as I was pushing my plate away, the taste of food long gone bitter in my mouth. My phone buzzed against the table. I glanced down and saw the name. Mrs. Patel, my neighbor, the kind of woman who never called after dark unless something was terribly wrong. I pressed the phone to my ear. Her voice came fast, breathless, almost trembling. Harriet, why is there a moving truck outside your house right now? My chest tightened. What are you talking about? I've been looking out the window for 10 minutes. Men are carrying boxes out of your front door. They rolled a dolly through the hallway. One of them is going down to the basement now. My fork slipped from my hand and clattered to the floor. For a moment, the whole room felt like it tilted sideways. You're sure? I'm watching it right now. They're loading your furniture, your paintings, everything. This isn't a mistake. Do you want me to call the police? I pushed my chair back so hard it screeched against the tile. Heads turned. Lucas appeared instantly at my side, smiling too widely, pretending concern. Mum, what's wrong? I stared at him, the phone still hot against my ear. There's a moving truck at my house. My neighbor sees men hauling out my things. His laugh came quick, too loud, carrying over the music. Mom, please. Mrs. Patel is half blind. She thinks shadows are burglars. You're overreacting. Mrs. Patel's voice cut through. They're pulling something heavy. It looks like a safe. Should I dial 911? My breath caught. I could barely hear myself speak. Yes, do it now. I'll come home immediately. I ended the call and shoved my chair back to leave, but Lucas's hand shot out and gripped my arm. His smile stayed on, but his eyes were hard. Sit down, Mum. You're embarrassing yourself. Let me go. He leaned closer, still pretending to be the charming host for anyone watching. If you walk out of here, you'll ruin my night. Stop making a scene. Nothing's happening. I jerked my arm, but he held tighter. My voice dropped low, sharp. You planned this, didn't you? His grin widened, but there was nothing warm in it. You think you're clever, don't you? But you don't know everything. You should just stay here and finish dessert. Sophie appeared at his other side, her face pale, her hand clutching a tray like a shield. Lucas, please, she whispered, her voice shaking. Don't do this. He snapped his head toward her. Shut up, Sophie. Then he turned back to me, his voice rising enough for nearby guests to hear. My mother thinks burglars are in her house right now. Isn't that funny? A few nervous chuckles rippled through the crowd, but most people just stared. I pulled my arm free, standing tall. Call it funny when you're behind bars. For the first time, the mask slipped fully. His face twisted, his teeth gritted. You think you can threaten me? You won't even make it there in time." The room went silent. Every guest froze, sensing something ugly beneath the laughter and music. I moved toward the door, my steps steady despite the storm inside me. Lucas darted in front of me, blocking the exit. "You're not going anywhere," he said under his breath. "You're going to sit here and keep smiling until I say otherwise." My pulse hammered, but I didn't flinch. "Move aside, Lucas, or I swear I will make sure every person in this room knows exactly what you've done." He leaned in, his whisper hot against my ear. "You don't want to test me, Mum. I'm not that boy in your yard with a stick anymore. I've got people waiting, and they don't like to be disappointed." Sophie gasped, dropping the tray in her hands. The crash of shattering glass echoed across the villa. Heads turned, all eyes locked on us. I stepped forward until I was inches from my son. My voice came out low but cutting. "If you think I'm going to sit here while thieves strip my life away, you're out of your mind." Lucas's hand twitched at his side, then curled into a fist. For a second, I thought he might actually strike me. Instead, he shoved his hands into his pockets, forcing a laugh that fooled no one. "She's had too much wine," he called to the crowd. "Always dramatic, always making stories. You all know how mothers can be." But his eyes betrayed him. They darted to the door, then to his watch, then back to me. He was measuring time, stalling. Sophie stepped forward, her voice trembling but louder than before. "Lucas, please stop this. Everyone can see what's happening." He whirled on her, his voice sharp. "If you don't want to be part of this, then leave. Go on. Walk out." Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't move. Instead, she looked at me with something like apology. I took a deep breath and turned to the nearest guest. "My neighbor is watching men steal everything I own. They're hauling my safe out right now. You all heard me. If something happens to me tonight, remember this moment." The room buzzed with whispers, phones lifted discreetly. Lucas's face drained of color. He lunged forward, hissing in my ear. "You stupid old woman. You don't know who you're messing with." I straightened, my voice calm and steady. "I know exactly who I'm messing with. My own son." The words hung heavy in the room. The music cut off. The party atmosphere collapsed in an instant. Guests shuffled, murmured, eyes darting between me and Lucas. Then, from somewhere deep inside the house, my phone vibrated again. A message flashed across the screen from Mrs. Patel. Short, direct. "Police on the way." I slipped the phone back into my purse, my heart pounding. Lucas's eyes narrowed, reading the change in my face. He knew. And for the first time that night, fear flickered behind his rage. He muttered through clenched teeth, "You've just made the biggest mistake of your life." I looked at him, my voice clear enough for every ear in the villa. "No, Lucas, that mistake was yours." And with that, the lines were drawn. There was no going back. The villa had gone quiet except for the sound of glass crunching under shoes where Sophie had dropped her tray. Every guest was frozen, caught between pretending they were at a party and knowing they were in the middle of something darker. I moved toward the door again, steady and certain. Lucas stepped in front of me, his arms stretched wide as if he owned the ground beneath my feet. "You're not leaving," he said, his voice low but clear enough for others to hear. "Sit down, Mum. You're making a fool of yourself." I looked him in the eye. "Get out of my way." His jaw tightened, but he kept that awful smile plastered across his face. "You think walking out changes anything? By the time you get there, everything will be gone. So just stay, drink, pretend you didn't hear a thing." The words hit like a blow. He wasn't even hiding it anymore. He wanted me trapped here, kept away while strangers ripped through my house. I felt a heat rise in my chest, but my body stayed cold. I took a step forward. His hand shot out, clamping down on my wrist hard enough to send a jolt through my arm. I said, "Sit down." Gasps rippled from the crowd. Sophie grabbed his arm. "Lucas, stop it. Everyone can see you." He yanked free and glared at her. "Stay out of this." I pulled my wrist back, my voice sharp. "You can humiliate me, but you will not steal from me." His eyes burned. "That's where you're wrong." The room buzzed with whispers. People pulled out phones, some recording, others pretending not to. But no one moved to help. They just watched, caught between curiosity and fear. I turned my back on him, forcing my legs toward the door. His voice chased me. "Walk out that door and you'll regret it." I stopped, half turning, my face steady though my heart thundered. I already regret raising a son who would do this. His face twisted. He slammed his glass down on the nearest table so hard the stem shattered in his hand. Blood welled, dripping onto the floor, but he didn't even flinch. He pointed at me, his voice shaking with rage. "You think you've won because you called the police? You think they'll get there in time? You don't know the people I'm dealing with. They don't care about laws. They don't care about you." The guests shifted, nervous now, sensing something dangerous had been said aloud. Sophie's voice broke the silence. "Lucas, please, stop before it's too late." He turned on her, his face red. "You want me to stop? Then maybe you should tell her what you know. Go on, Sophie, tell her. Tell her who signed the papers." Her hands shook. She looked at me, then at him, then back down at the floor. Tears slid down her cheeks. "I didn't want to. He forced me. He made me witness it. The deed. He already faked your signature, Harriet." The words slammed into me like a hammer. My knees wobbled, but I forced myself to stand tall. The forged papers were real. He had gone further than I had even feared. I stepped closer to him, my voice low but cutting. "So you admit it. You forged my name. You planned this entire night to trap me. And you dragged your wife into it." His eyes darted around the room. The act of the charming host was gone. He looked cornered, wild. "So what if I did? It's just paper. People forge things all the time. Nobody cares." "Everyone cares," I said, "especially the police." As if on cue, a siren wailed faintly in the distance. It grew louder, slicing through the night air. Guests turned toward the windows. Some hurried for the door, eager to escape whatever storm was about to break. Lucas's face drained of color. He hissed at me. "You had to ruin everything." "You ruined it yourself," I said. He lunged forward suddenly, his hand gripping the back of my neck. Gasps erupted. "If you open your mouth when they get here, I swear you'll regret it," he snarled into my ear. I shoved him back with more strength than I knew I had. He stumbled into a table, knocking over plates and bottles. Sophie rushed between us, sobbing. "Enough! Stop this, both of you!" But there was no stopping. Not anymore. The sirens were right outside now. Red and blue lights flashed across the villa's glass walls. Guests scattered, some pushing past one another to get out. 2 officers appeared in the doorway, their hands hovering near their belts. "Is there a problem here?" one of them called out. Every eye turned toward me and Lucas. He straightened, blood still dripping from his cut hand, and smiled that same broken smile. "No problem at all, officers. Just a little family disagreement." I stepped forward, my voice strong and steady. "There is a problem, a very big one, and you're looking at it." Lucas's head snapped toward me, his eyes full of fire. For a heartbeat, I thought he might try to silence me right there in front of everyone. But the officers moved closer, their expressions firm, their presence heavy. He lifted his hands slowly, trying to play it calm. You see, my mother gets confused sometimes. She thinks people are out to get her. Tonight she thinks there are burglars in her house. It's nonsense. But before I could respond, my phone vibrated again in my purse. I pulled it out with shaking hands. A message from Mrs. Patel glowed on the screen. They caught one of the men. He confessed. Said your son hired them. The breath rushed out of me. I raised my eyes to Lucas, my voice sharp enough to cut the air. It's over. His mask shattered completely. He lunged forward, shouting, "She's lying!" But the officers were already there, holding him back. The guests stood in stunned silence. Sophie sank into a chair, her hands covering her face. And I, for the first time that night, felt the weight of what had been taken from me. My home had been invaded. My life had been ripped open. My own son had tried to destroy me. As the officers dragged him outside, his voice echoed through the villa. You think you've won, Mum? This isn't over. Not by a long shot. The words cut deep, but the truth was clear. The son I had raised was gone. In his place stood only betrayal. And as the lights from the police cars painted the walls red and blue, I knew I had crossed a line I could never step back from. The battle had begun, and it would leave scars no one could hide. The police car lights still cut through the villa's glass walls, painting everything in red and blue. Guests had scattered, leaving only a few whispering in corners. Lucas was outside with the officers, pacing like a caged animal, his voice carrying in bursts of anger I could hear even through the walls. Sophie sat in a chair near the bar, her hands pressed against her face. The room smelled of spilled wine, broken glass, and fear. I stood alone by the doorway, holding my phone like a lifeline. Mrs. Patel's messages sat on the screen, proof that I was not imagining this. Proof that someone had seen everything unfold. Without her, I might still be sitting in that chair, trapped by Lucas's lies. My heart ached with betrayal, but it also steadied. There was one person who had chosen to act when everyone else turned away. I dialed her number. She picked up instantly. Harriet, the police are here. They've stopped the truck. They opened the back. Your furniture, boxes, even the safe, it's all inside. They caught one of the men trying to run. My knees nearly gave out. I clutched the doorframe. What did he say? He said your son hired him, she whispered. Said Lucas promised 5,000 to get it done tonight. He confessed right there on the street. The words pressed down like a stone on my chest. It was one thing to suspect, another to hear it confirmed. My son had not only betrayed me, he had signed a contract with strangers to gut my life and leave me empty. Thank you, I said softly. You don't know what that means. I do, she answered. I've lived next to you long enough to know how hard you've worked for everything you have. Don't let him take it from you. Hold on. Her voice carried strength I desperately needed. When the call ended, I straightened my back. The tremble in my hands faded. Inside, Sophie finally lifted her head. Her mascara had run, leaving streaks on her cheeks. She looked at me with wide, guilty eyes. He made me sign as a witness, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He told me if I didn't, he'd ruin me too. I tried to warn you, Harriet. I swear I did. I walked closer, my eyes steady on hers. Then help me now. Tell the truth. Every detail. No more silence. She nodded quickly, as if the decision had been tearing her apart all night. The papers, the forged deed. He kept copies at home, in the drawer by his desk. He was planning to use them tomorrow, to make it look official. He thought if he stalled you tonight, it would be too late. The room seemed to shrink, pieces of his plan locked into place in my mind. He had not only hired thieves, but laid out a trail of paper meant to erase me legally, even if the police stopped him physically. Outside, I heard the officers raising their voices. Lucas shouted back, loud enough for everyone left inside to hear. "She's crazy. She doesn't know what she's saying. None of this will stick." One officer entered, tall and broad-shouldered, his voice calm but firm. "Mrs. Monroe, we've secured your property. The truck is impounded. We'll need you to come down to the station to give a full statement." I met his eyes. "I'll come, but I want it on record right now. My son forged my name. He tried to strip me of everything I own. I have a neighbor who saw it, a thief who confessed, and a daughter-in-law who will testify." The officer nodded, scribbling notes. "Understood." Lucas suddenly pushed past the second officer at the door, his shirt rumpled, his face flushed with rage. "You're lying, Mum. You've always been against me. You'd rather see me rot than help me one damn time." My body shook, but my voice stayed level. "Help is what I gave you your entire life. Tonight you tried to repay it by erasing me. That ends here." He lunged forward, but the officers caught him, dragging him back. "This isn't over," he shouted again, his voice breaking. "You'll regret this when they come for you instead of me." They pulled him outside, his protests echoing into the night. The villa fell into silence again. Sophie sat slumped in her chair, staring at the floor. I walked past her, pausing only for a moment. "You chose to stay quiet too long," I said. "But now you'd better find your voice." She lifted her eyes slowly. "I will. I promise. I can't protect him anymore." Outside, I stepped into the cool night air. The ocean roared in the distance, the salt sharp against my skin. The police cars lined the driveway, lights still flashing, officers moving back and forth. One of them guided me toward a patrol car. In that moment, standing there with the house behind me and the wreckage of the night still heavy on my shoulders, I felt something unexpected. Not relief, not even anger, but clarity. I had spent years forgiving Lucas, hoping he would grow out of his recklessness, believing that blood was enough to bind us. Tonight shattered all of that. Mrs. Patel's call had been the lifeline that kept me from losing everything. Her quick action and courage had changed the outcome of this night. And as the police took my son away in handcuffs, I knew one thing for certain. He had stolen my trust, but he had not stolen my will. The battle was not finished. It was just moving into the open. I squared my shoulders, climbed into the car, and whispered to myself, "Let him try. I'm ready now." The station was colder than I expected. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the smell of stale coffee lingered in the air. I sat at a metal table, my hands folded, my purse on the chair beside me. Across from me, an officer clicked his pen, his eyes steady but not unkind. "Mrs. Monroe, let's start with the basics," he said. "Tell me in your own words what happened tonight." So I did. I laid it all out, piece by piece. The forged deed, the truck, the stolen safe, the confrontation at the party. I told him about Sophie's testimony and Mrs. Patel's call. My voice didn't shake. Each word landed heavy, like nails into a coffin. He nodded slowly, writing everything down. "We've already spoken to your neighbor. Her statement matches yours. The man we caught also gave a partial confession, said your son promised him money to move the items. That's strong evidence." I leaned forward. "Strong isn't enough. My son has been lying his way out of trouble since he was a teenager. He'll twist this too. I need this to stick. I need every loose end tied down. The officer studied me. You want to press full charges? Yes, I said without hesitation. For the theft, for the forgery, for everything. He wrote again, then looked up. That's going to tear your family apart. It already has, I answered. After the paperwork was finished, they let me leave. Sophie was waiting outside, her coat pulled tight around her shoulders. She looked small, like someone who had finally realized the ground beneath her was gone. I gave them my statement, she said quietly. I told them everything about the papers. I'm sorry I didn't do it sooner. I studied her. For years, I had wanted to believe she might bring out the better side of Lucas. Now I saw she had been another victim, trapped by his temper and his lies. We'll see what the court decides, I said. But don't think I'll protect him anymore. Her eyes welled with tears. I understand. We parted ways in the parking lot. The night air was sharp, and the stars felt far away. I drove home with both hands gripping the wheel, my mind racing. The house stood dark and silent when I arrived, police tape stretched across the front door. My chest ached as I stepped inside. Furniture overturned, drawers yanked open, boxes split apart. The safe was gone, but at least it was in police custody now. I walked through each room slowly, touching the edges of broken things, lifting frames that had fallen. This wasn't just a burglary. It was a violation. My son had turned my home into a target, my life into a prize to be taken. In the kitchen, I pulled out a notepad and began writing. Names, dates, every debt Lucas had racked up that I knew about. The times he had asked for money, the times I had said yes, the times I had said no. I wrote down Mrs. Patel's account, Sophie's words, even the way Lucas had grabbed my wrist at the party. It all mattered. This wasn't about anger anymore. It was about building a wall of truth he could not climb. The next morning, I called a lawyer. His name was Daniel Harlow, a man recommended by a friend years ago when I updated my will. He answered on the second ring. Mrs. Monroe, I heard about last night. I read the preliminary report, he said. You're lucky the police got there when they did. Lucky isn't good enough, I said. I need protection. I need to make sure my house, my savings, everything is locked down, and I need my son held accountable. He was quiet for a moment. You're ready for a fight, then? I've been pushed into it, I replied. We met that afternoon. He was sharp, efficient, and listened without interrupting. He asked for copies of every document I had, every message from Mrs. Patel, every word Sophie had spoken. He promised to subpoena the moving company records and the forged deed. He'll try to argue coercion, Daniel said, or that you're confused about your own finances. We'll need to be airtight. Then make me airtight, I told him. I don't care what it costs. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt control returning. The fear was still there, but it no longer ruled me. Action did. That evening, Mrs. Patel came by. She stood in my living room, her hands folded, her eyes full of concern. They asked me to testify in court, she said. Will you? I asked. She nodded. Of course. I saw what I saw. I won't let him deny it. I reached out and squeezed her hand. You may have saved me more than you know. She smiled faintly. Neighbors look out for each other, even when family doesn't. After she left, I sat by the window, watching the streetlights flicker. My house was scarred, my son was in custody, and my future was uncertain. But I wasn't broken. I was preparing. I thought of Lucas's words, his threats, his rage. I thought of Sophie's trembling voice, of Mrs. Patel's courage, of Daniel's sharp focus. The pieces were falling into place. This wasn't about surviving anymore. It was about fighting back. I closed my eyes and whispered to the empty room. You wanted a war, Lucas. You've got one. And for the first time, I felt ready. I woke the next morning with a sharp clarity. The night of chaos was behind me, but the fight was not. Lucas would not stop. I knew him too well. He had been cornered before, and he always tried to wriggle out. But this time, I had no intention of letting him breathe easy. By noon, I was sitting across from Daniel in his office, a stack of folders between us. He had moved quickly, already gathering documents. Your son is filing motions to suppress the neighbour's testimony, he said, tapping the papers. He claims Mrs. Patel is unreliable. He's also pushing to dismiss the thief's confession as hearsay. I clenched my jaw. Of course he is. Lying is the only language he knows. Daniel leaned forward. Then we counter hard. We file an injunction to freeze his assets. We block any access he might have to your estate. And we go public in court filings. He won't like that. I thought about it for only a second. Do it. By that evening, the paperwork was filed. Every account Lucas had access to was flagged. The forged deed he had drawn up was locked in evidence. My house was sealed tighter than it had ever been. The move was bold, and it lit a fire under him. The very next day, Sophie called. Her voice was shaky. He's furious. He says you embarrassed him in front of everyone. He's threatening to drag me down with him if I testify. You have to stand strong, I told her. If you stay silent now, he wins again. This is your chance to break free. There was a pause, then a whisper. I'll testify. He can't scare me anymore. I hung up, knowing that my circle of allies was small, but solid. Sophie's choice mattered. Mrs. Patel's courage mattered. Together, they were enough to corner him. 2 days later, we had the first hearing. The courtroom smelled of wood polish and old paper. Lucas walked in wearing a suit too sharp for a man in handcuffs, his smile plastered on like the mask he wore at his party. He looked straight at me as if daring me to flinch. I didn't. When the judge entered, the room settled. Lucas's lawyer argued first, his words slick, rehearsed. This is nothing more than a misunderstanding. My client was arranging to help his elderly mother move her belongings to a safer location. The neighbour is mistaken. The so-called confession was coerced, and Mrs. Monroe herself is confused about her own finances. I wanted to laugh, but I kept still. Let them spin their lies. Then it was Daniel's turn. He stood tall, his voice even but sharp. Your Honour, we have video evidence from the neighbour showing men carrying property out of Mrs. Monroe's home without her consent. We have a recorded confession. We have documents of a forged deed with my client's signature copied without her knowledge. And we have testimony from the defendant's own wife, prepared to state that she was forced to witness these forgeries. The judge raised an eyebrow, leaning back. Lucas shifted in his seat, his jaw twitching. When Mrs. Patel took the stand, her voice was steady. She described every detail she had seen that night. The truck, the safe, the men hauling boxes. She even named the license plate number, which matched the impounded vehicle. Next came Sophie. She walked to the stand slowly, her hands shaking, but when she sat down, something in her face hardened. She looked at Lucas once, then turned away. He made me watch him sign her name. He told me if I didn't, he'd ruin me. He said nobody would believe her over him. The courtroom murmured. Lucas shot forward, his voice breaking. You're lying, Sophie. You always hated me. The judge slammed the gavel. Order! Sophie's voice rose over the noise. I stayed quiet too long, but I won't lie for you anymore. It was the first real crack in his armor, and I felt the shift in the room. When it was my turn, I walked to the stand, my back straight. I told them everything. My words were plain, not dressed up, not softened. I told them how he had grabbed my wrist, how he had laughed when I tried to leave, how he told me I would regret not obeying. I told them about the forged papers, the stolen safe, the lies stacked so high they nearly crushed me. When I finished, the silence was heavy. The judge nodded, making notes. Lucas stared at me, his mask completely gone now. His eyes were raw, burning with something between rage and desperation. The judge spoke. Given the testimony and evidence presented, this court finds sufficient cause to proceed with charges of forgery, attempted theft, and coercion. The defendant will remain under restriction until trial. The gavel fell again. Lucas exploded, shouting across the courtroom. You think this is over, Mum? You think you've beaten me? You don't know the people I owe. They'll come for both of us. Officers restrained him, pulling him back. The judge ordered him removed. The sound of his voice echoing in that room was a reminder of just how far gone he was. I walked out of the courthouse into the bright afternoon sun. My legs trembled, but my spirit did not. For the first time, I felt the weight shift. I had struck the first blow, and it had landed. The fight was far from done, but I had tasted the power of standing up instead of shrinking down. He wanted me silent. I had spoken. He wanted me broken. I had risen. As I got into the car beside Daniel, I said only one thing. Now he knows I'm not afraid. And I meant it. The first move was mine, and I was ready for the rest. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters when I left the hearing. Their voices rose above each other, questions flying like darts. I kept my head high, ignoring the flashing cameras. Daniel walked beside me, shielding me from the worst of it, but I knew this was only the beginning. Lucas had been exposed, and men like him never went quietly. That night, I sat in my living room, the air heavy with silence. The police tape had been removed, but the scars in the house remained. Drawers were still broken, picture frames shattered. I refused to clean them up yet. I wanted the mess to remind me of what I was fighting for. The phone rang after midnight. I picked it up, expecting Daniel or maybe Sophie. Instead, a voice I didn't know slithered through the line. Back off the case, Mrs. Monroe. Drop the charges. You don't want to be caught in your son's mess. My hand tightened around the receiver. Who is this? The man laughed softly. A friend of your boy. You don't want to find out what happens when debts go unpaid. Let it go. The line went dead. I sat there in the dark, the receiver pressed to my ear long after the call ended. Lucas had been telling the truth about one thing. He owed people, and they were circling. The next morning, Daniel came by. I told him about the call. He frowned, rubbing his temple. They're trying to rattle you. We'll report it, but don't let them scare you into silence. I'm not scared, I said, though my voice was tighter than I liked. But I know Lucas. He'll use anyone he can. He won't stop until he's dragged me down with him. Daniel nodded. Then we stay one step ahead. Later that week, another hearing was scheduled, this time for evidence review. Lucas entered the courtroom looking worse than before. His eyes were red, his hair disheveled, but his mouth never stopped moving. He whispered to his lawyer, smirked at me, glared at Sophie. When the judge asked if he understood the charges, he said loudly, "This is a setup. My own mother wants me destroyed. The judge warned him once, then twice. On the third outburst, the gavel slammed hard. One more interruption and I'll hold you in contempt. Lucas threw his hands up. Fine. Do whatever you want. None of this will hold. I watched him carefully. Every twitch, every sneer, every flicker of rage told me he was unraveling. But I also knew a desperate man could still strike hard. After the hearing, Sophie approached me in the hallway, her face pale. He called me from lockup, she whispered. He said if I testify again, I'll regret it. He said he'll ruin me. I placed a hand on her arm. That's fear talking. He's losing control. Don't let him win now. Her eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. I'll stand by the truth. Days blurred together after that, filled with lawyers, statements, and endless paperwork. But the tension didn't fade. At night, I heard footsteps on the street outside my house. Once I found a cigarette butt on my porch, still warm. Another time, I woke to see a car idling across the road, its lights off, engine humming. When I opened the door, it drove away slowly. I called Daniel again. They're watching me. We'll request increased patrols in your neighborhood, he said. But this is what Lucas wants, to shake you, to make you too tired to keep fighting. I closed my eyes, steadying my breath. Then he doesn't know me at all. By the time the next court date arrived, the case had grown heavier. The forged deed was confirmed by handwriting experts. The thief's confession was written, signed, and backed by video. Mrs. Patel's testimony was considered credible, and Sophie, despite her fear, agreed to take the stand again. In the courtroom, Lucas looked smaller than before. His suit was wrinkled, his lawyer flustered. But when Sophie walked to the stand, his eyes flared with hatred. "You don't have to do this," he shouted, standing before the judge could stop him. "Think about our family. Think about what you're throwing away." Sophie's voice trembled, but she spoke anyway. "The only one who threw this family away was you, Lucas." The gavel slammed. Officers forced him back into his seat. His lawyer buried his face in his hands. I sat there, my heart pounding. This was what escalation looked like. Every time Lucas lashed out, every time he tried to twist the truth, he only pulled the noose tighter around his own neck. But I knew better than to relax. He would fight until the very last breath, and that made him dangerous. After the session, Daniel leaned toward me as we gathered our things. He's running out of ground to stand on. But don't underestimate him. He'll try something else. Count on it. I nodded, my eyes on Lucas as he was led away in cuffs, his head turned back toward me. He mouthed the words, "This isn't over." That night, as I locked my door and pulled the curtains tight, I thought about those words. He was right. It wasn't over. The fight was only climbing higher, dragging us all with it. And I knew the next time we faced each other, it would not be in whispers or stolen glances. It would be in the open, a clash that no one could ignore. The storm had only just begun. The day of the trial began under a heavy sky. Clouds hung low, pressing down on the city as though even the weather knew what was coming. I arrived early, sitting in the wooden bench of the courtroom, my hands folded in my lap. Every creak of the doors, every shuffle of shoes on the floor echoed in the silence. This was not another hearing. This was the moment everything would come to light. Lucas entered flanked by officers, wearing a suit that looked borrowed, his wrists still red from cuffs. His eyes locked on me immediately. He smirked, as if he still believed he could win by sheer defiance. But I saw the cracks in him. His shoulders slumped, his skin pale, his confidence leaking away. The judge entered, the gavel struck, and the trial began. The prosecution opened with calm precision. They laid out the timeline, the forged deed, the stolen safe, the moving truck caught red-handed. They promised evidence, testimony, and a story that left no doubt. Lucas's lawyer countered with the same tired tune. "This is a misunderstanding. My client was only protecting his mother's assets. She is confused. She misinterpreted his intentions." The words rolled off me like rain. I had heard too many excuses before. This time, facts would speak louder. Mrs. Patel was called first. She sat straight, her sari neat, her voice steady. She told the court exactly what she saw. The truck, the men, the safe hauled from my basement. She even handed over the photos she had taken, grainy but clear enough to show strangers in my home. Lucas's lawyer tried to rattle her. "You are an elderly woman with poor eyesight, aren't you?" She raised her chin. "My eyes are just fine. I saw what I saw." The jury nodded. Then came Sophie. She walked to the stand with trembling steps. But when she sat down, her face hardened. She spoke of the night Lucas shoved the deed in front of her. How he forged my name, then ordered her to sign as witness. How he threatened to ruin her if she refused. Her voice cracked once, but she did not waver. Lucas erupted. "You liar! You're doing this because you want money from her will." He pointed straight at me, his face red. The judge banged the gavel. "Sit down, Mr. Monroe." Officers forced him back into his seat. The outburst only deepened the silence in the room. The jury saw him not as a son protecting his mother, but as a man unraveling before their eyes. Then it was my turn. I walked to the stand, the weight of decades of motherhood heavy on my shoulders. I told them what he had said to me that night, how he blocked me from leaving the party, how he laughed when I tried to go home, how he told me I would regret not obeying. I told them about the call from Mrs. Patel, the sight of my house torn apart, the safe stolen, the forged deed. My voice stayed even, though my heart pounded. When I finished, there was no sound, only the judge's pen scratching on the pad before him. The prosecution rested, then Lucas's lawyer called him to the stand. He straightened his jacket and walked up like a man going to battle. His smile returned, brittle and forced. "Did you hire men to remove items from your mother's house?" the lawyer asked. "No," Lucas said smoothly. "I arranged for movers to secure her valuables because the neighborhood is unsafe. I wanted to help her." The lawyer nodded. "And the forged deed?" Lucas leaned forward. "That was a draft. She agreed to sign it but changed her mind later. She's old. She forgets things." The words stung, but I held my face still. Then came cross-examination. The prosecutor stepped up, his voice sharp. "Mr. Monroe, if you were protecting your mother, why did the movers confess you promised them $5,000 in cash to complete the job that night, while she was at your party?" Lucas faltered. "They're lying." "Why would strangers lie about you? Why would your neighbor invent photos? Why would your wife risk everything to testify against you?" Lucas's face darkened. "Because they all hate me. Because she poisoned them against me." He pointed at me again. "She always wanted me to fail." The prosecutor turned to the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard it yourselves. This is not the voice of a protector. This is the voice of a son who chose greed over blood." The judge allowed closing arguments. The prosecution laid the evidence neatly, one brick stacked on another until the wall was solid. The defense sputtered, repeating words like misunderstanding, confusion, misinterpretation. But the weight of proof crushed every excuse. Finally, the judge instructed the jury. They left for deliberation. The courtroom held its breath. Lucas leaned back in his chair, smirking again, mouthing words at me. "They'll never believe you." But when the jury returned, their faces were set. The foreman stood. "We find the defendant guilty of forgery, attempted theft, and coercion." The words hit the air like thunder. The gavel slammed. Lucas shot up from his chair. "This is a sham. She's not my mother anymore. You hear me? She's dead to me." His screams filled the courtroom as officers restrained him, dragging him away. His voice cracked with rage, echoing down the hall until the doors shut behind him. I sat frozen, my breath shallow. It was over, yet it wasn't. My son had been stripped bare in front of the world, his lies shattered. But the ache in my chest was heavier than victory. Still, I straightened in my chair. Justice had spoken. The truth had stood. I had not let him erase me. As I walked out into the light, the sky broke open with a cold wind. The trial was over, but the scars of betrayal would never fade. And yet, for the first time in years, I felt steady. He had tried to bury me under lies. I had dug myself free. The war between us had ended in that room, and I had walked out whole. The verdict echoed in my ears long after the gavel fell. Guilty. The word had weight, pressing down on me even as it lifted a burden I had carried for too long. Lucas was led away, his shouting trailing behind him until it vanished down the corridor. Reporters swarmed outside the courthouse, their voices sharp and hungry, but I walked past them without a word. My story had already been told. Back home, the house still bore the scars of that night. Police tape was gone, but the broken drawers, the overturned furniture, the stains on the carpet remained. I had refused to fix it while the trial raged, but now the silence begged for restoration. Slowly, I began to put things back. Each picture frame I straightened, each drawer I mended felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Sophie came the next morning. She looked tired, her eyes rimmed red, but she stood taller than I had seen her in years. "He called me from jail," she said quietly. "He begged me to retract my testimony, said if I ever loved him, I'd take it back." I poured her tea, sliding the cup across the table. "And what did you say?" She met my eyes. "I told him love doesn't cover crimes. I told him I won't lie for him anymore." A silence settled between us, heavy, but not uncomfortable. For the first time, I believed her. She was free from him, even if it had taken fire to break the chains. That afternoon, Daniel called. His tone was steady, professional, but I could hear a rare softness in his voice. "The sentencing will be next week. Given the charges, he's looking at several years. But I want you prepared. He may try to negotiate, plead for leniency." "He'll get none from me," I said flatly. This was his choice. Daniel paused. "I thought you'd say that. Still, be ready. He'll push every button he can until the very end." The week passed in a blur. Each day, I rebuilt a little more of my home. Mrs. Patel visited often, bringing food, her presence warm and steady. She never asked questions, never pressed, just sat with me when the nights felt heavy. On the day of sentencing, the courtroom was less crowded, but no less tense. Lucas walked in shackled, his suit exchanged for a plain jumpsuit. The smirk was gone. He looked smaller, like the walls had already closed around him. The judge reviewed the charges, the testimonies, the evidence. Then she turned to me. "Mrs. Monroe, would you like to make a statement before sentencing?" I rose slowly, my voice calm. "Yes, Your Honor. I want the court to know that I did not seek this trial out of vengeance. I sought it because my son tried to erase me. He took my trust, my home, my safety, and tried to strip them away with lies. A mother should never have to fear her child, yet I did. I will live with those scars, but I will not live in silence. Justice matters. The truth matters. The judge nodded. Thank you. Lucas's lawyer made one last plea, speaking of rehabilitation, of family bonds, of second chances. Then Lucas stood, his voice sharp, desperate. She's lying. She always hated me. She wanted to make me a failure. I was trying to protect what should have been mine anyway. She doesn't deserve it. His words cut through the courtroom, raw and bitter. But no one moved. No one believed. The judge's gavel fell one final time. Lucas Monroe, you are sentenced to 10 years for forgery, attempted theft, and coercion. Gasps whispered through the room. Lucas shouted, straining against the officers as they led him away. This isn't the end. You'll regret this, Mother. You'll die alone. The doors slammed shut behind him. I stood there, rooted, my chest heavy but steady. 10 years. It was both too much and not enough. A mother's heart never truly hardens, but justice had spoken, and there was no undoing it. Outside, the air was crisp. The courthouse steps stretched before me, but I didn't feel the same weight pressing me down. Sophie joined me, her hand brushing mine lightly. It's over, she whispered. Not over, I said softly, but maybe the worst is behind us. We walked together toward the street, the crowd thinning around us. For the first time in months, I felt the faint stir of peace. The battle had been brutal, tearing through everything I thought unshakable, but I was still standing. And as I looked up at the grey sky breaking into pale sunlight, I knew one thing with certainty. Lucas had tried to bury me under betrayal and lies, but I had climbed out. I had fought back. I had won. The war was ending, and for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to breathe. The weeks after the sentencing were quieter than I ever imagined they could be. The house that once felt haunted by fear slowly became mine again. Repairs were finished, furniture was replaced, and the silence inside turned gentle instead of heavy. For the first time in months, I slept without waking at every sound. Yet even in that calm, my heart carried the weight of Lucas. He was my son, no matter what he had done. Every mother's instinct is to protect. And though he had wounded me deeper than anyone else could, I could not stop myself from wondering if he was eating, if he was safe, if the walls of the prison were closing in on him. One afternoon, I decided to visit him. Daniel thought it was too soon, but I felt the pull. I needed to see him, not as the man in the courtroom, but as the boy I had once held in my arms. The visiting room smelled of disinfectant and metal. I sat at a small table, my hands folded tightly. When they brought him out, he looked thinner, his eyes darker, but for a brief moment he seemed like my son again. He sat across from me, his shoulders slumped. "Why are you here?" he asked flatly. "Because you're still my son," I said. He laughed bitterly. "After everything I did to you, after trying to take everything from you, you still want to pretend there's something left between us." I leaned forward, my voice steady. "No, I'm not pretending. You betrayed me. You tried to erase me. But hate won't fix anything. Justice had to be served, and it was. Now the only thing left is whether you let this destroy you completely, or whether you try to rebuild something of yourself." His eyes flickered, a spark buried under the weight of anger. He didn't speak for a long time. Finally he whispered, "I don't deserve forgiveness." "Maybe not," I said softly. "But forgiveness isn't something you earn. It's something given so that the weight doesn't crush us both. I forgive you, Lucas, not because of what you did, but because I won't let your mistakes define the rest of my life. He looked at me, his jaw trembling. For the first time since this nightmare began, I saw his mask break. His eyes filled with tears he tried to hide. He pressed his hands against the table, then lowered his head. I don't know if I can change, he said. You can, I answered, but you have to want it. Silence stretched, but it was not empty. It was filled with the fragile thread of something I thought I had lost forever: hope. The guard announced that time was up. I stood, looking down at him one last time. I'll visit again, I said. He lifted his head slightly, nodding once. It wasn't an apology, not yet, but it was the beginning of something. When I walked out into the sunlight, I felt lighter. Justice had been done. My home was safe. My dignity was intact. And though my son's path was uncertain, there was a small chance, just a chance, that healing might still come. The story did not end with bitterness, but with balance. Justice had stood firm, and forgiveness had cracked the door open to something new. For the first time in a long time, I believed in tomorrow. If you've stayed with me through this story, thank you. Sometimes life throws us battles we never imagined, and the people we love can hurt us the most. But justice matters, and so does forgiveness. What do you think? Is forgiveness always the right choice? Or are there moments when holding on to anger feels justified? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and share your story in the comments below. Your voice might give strength to someone else who needs it today.